Okay, we have before us item number 3, I believe moved by Alderman Wiley on behalf of the committee, and Alderman Harrell.
Thank you, Your Worship. I wish to speak in opposition to the recommendation that's shown in item number 3. I oppose the recommendation to committee, and as you're all aware, the original staff recommendation is opposed to this also. The recommendation that is now before you, I don't really understand, why it's here. As far as I'm concerned, it's a matter of the Planning and Development Committee, for some reason, temporarily losing its sense of direction. I just don't understand how they can do a 180-degree turn from the staff report that was in front of them. I think the issue that's here before us is the issue of the preservation of a stable, older residential neighborhood. And I'd like to remind this council that this is an issue that not only affects this neighborhood, but it affects many, many other neighborhoods in this city. And indeed, we dealt with one earlier this evening. The Planning Development Committee recently dealt with a delegation of homeowners from the Cadillac South area on a similar issue, and they were accompanied to P&D committee with Alderman Marianne Shoulder and Alderman Ed Kolodzy. And both those aldermen supported their residents and urged the P&D committee to preserve those neighborhoods. Again, in tonight's correspondence, item number 6, we're faced with a situation where another group of residents in the Oshawa Boulevard area are facing the same sort of problem of the impact of illegal or commercial conversion of single-family dwellings. As you're all aware, this council dealt recently with the Brock Street West application for a beauty salon and turned that application down on the basis that it was an intrusion, a commercial intrusion, into a stable residential neighborhood. And indeed, there are many more instances of council's support for these stable neighborhoods. I think it's very necessary to make the comment that neighborhoods such as this form a key element in the housing stock of this city, and that they provide not only an entry level into the housing market in this city, but they also provide housing for our retired citizens. And I'm sure you'll all agree that both parts of that market are essential to this city. I'm not going to repeat all of the reasons that staff turned this request down, but I think it's important simply to highlight 2 or 3 of them. It's important to recognize that this was and has been for a long period of time a single-family residence. Indeed, I believe the time was, quoted as being 39 years. The staff's comments, very briefly, are that in the department's opinion, the proposed beauty salon would not be consistent with the intent of the official plan. They go on to give 2 or 3 different reasons, and they then go on to describe the neighborhood. In their description of the neighborhood, they refer to it as being almost exclusively residential, and they give evidence of home improvement in the area, and that again they see this development as representing a commercial intrusion into a stable, older residential neighborhood. Staff also see it as a possible undermining of the continued viability of an area that is in this particular report, staff have left no doubt whatsoever about their position. They do not believe that the application should be approved. I think that it's also very interesting to point out that we have another item to be dealt with on our P&D report this evening, which is item number 4, where we'll be hearing from the IBI group, from Paul Stagel, and those members of council that have read that report will have seen that the Oshawa Central Business District Concept Plan and Development Strategy identifies this area as an environment area of established, stable residential area and recommends the implementation of a strategy to reinforce the further stabilization of a residential nature. So in other words, the IBI report is telling us that the area should be retained as a stable neighborhood area. This basically concludes the comments that I want to make in opposition to the recommendation that's before us, but I think there are two small items that I'd just like to add. First of all, there has been some indication, and particularly at the committee level, that there has already been a commercial intrusion into the area, and that commercial intrusion is in the form of a convenience grocery store. I'd like to point out to this council that, as Mr. Gerard pointed out, that commercial intrusion has been there for 60 years. Now, when I was thinking about the subject this afternoon, I realized that I could recall the commercial enterprise being there for a period of 40 years. That may be longer than some of the rest of the members of this council, but
Do they have electricity there then, Irv?
certainly when I was walking up Division Street to attend OCEI, that commercial neighborhood store was there. And of course, you're all aware of the fact that in those days, neighborhood stores were a very common entity in all the neighborhoods. So there has not been any commercial intrusion of a recent nature into that neighborhood, nor do I think there should be. The second comment that I want to make is that it's important that this council recognize the obvious participation that General Motors has made to that area in the preservation of that neighborhood. Now, anybody that's been up and down Division Street recently could not fail to be impressed by the good job that General Motors has done in integrating that North Plant operation into the residential community. The type of building that General Motors has put up, the type, the style, the construction, and the accompanying landscaping are features that shows General Motors' commitment to being a good neighbor. And now I think it's this council's opportunity to protect that neighborhood and encourage the residential preservation by defeating the recommendation that's in front of us. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Alderman